To call the Lane County Budget Committee meeting for Thursday, May 25th, 2017. It's 5:30. I'd like to call us to order. And before we start with the agenda, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the Lane County staff that are here, that have been here on different nights. Thank you for your help in preparing the budget and the hard work you've done. And if there are any speakers, I believe there's a couple signed up. Thank you for being here to represent part of the community. And I'd like to thank the Budget Committee members for another year of hard work, good questions, deliberation. And with that, we will go right into public comment. Have the bailiff hand me the... Okay, we have two people signed up, Janine Parisi and Merlin Huff from El Rapa. Go ahead.
Hi. Commissioners and members of the Budget Committee, thanks for your service. Congratulations on a successful public safety levy. My name is Janine Parisi, and I am here on behalf of the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency. I am the board chair this year. It's my privilege to be here. And I'm asking for support to help continue to do the work that we're doing at the local level that's been so successful in improving air quality. There's still important work to do. That includes supporting Oak Ridge as they move towards compliance, monitoring for air toxics, responding to community members' concerns and complaints. We get quite a number of them. Ensuring proper asbestos abatement procedures, and being vigilant in our education efforts around the wood burning season so we don't see exceedances in Oak Ridge or even in the Eugene area. El Rapa is fortunate to have a diversity of funding sources from industry permits, federal and state sources, and local dues from our partners. As you know, the local dues portion were significantly reduced during the economic recession. We at El Rapa did all we could to maintain services as best we could during those tough economic times. Each year, the board re-examines our budget, and we have been reticent to ask for increases to local dues. Not because there's no need, but because we're very sensitive to the hard choices that our local partners have to make. So this is the first time in almost 10 budget cycles that we have proposed a small increase in local dues to begin recovering some of that lost ground during the recession. For each dollar of local dues that is increased, we are able to match those funds with another $3 in state and federal dollars. This multiplier effect means that a modest increase proposed generates greater benefits in supporting the programs and services we can provide to improve public health and livability of our community, as well as respond to new regulatory requirements. It is by no means a windfall to us, and El Rapa will still have to exercise prudence and creativity to get the work done. But I'm confident this will be a well and good leveraged investment. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Jared Hitchmans and committee members, I'm Merlin Huff. I'm Executive Director of El Rapa. Thank you for this opportunity. As Janine mentioned, local dues are a small part of our budget, but they're especially important because we leverage state and federal funds with those local dues from Lane County and the cities of Eugene, Springfield, Cottage Grove, and Oak Ridge. So it's about 7% of the budget, but it's actually can potentially be 4 times as important as it might look on the surface. And the El Rapa Board of Directors did look at the 60% reduction in local dues and state funds that we incurred during the recession, and they have a 10-year plan to get to try to ask for a portion of that back over the 10-year period. This first year, the request is for a 10% increase. What that means, instead of the proposed $45,017 that's in the proposed budget for Lane County, it would be $49,410, or about a $4,400 increase to reflect that 10%. That's our request. The county staff are certainly in a better position to determine how to fund LRAPA dues, but I would point out that transportation is a major contributor to all of the different air pollution categories, whether you're talking about air toxics such as benzene or diesel particulate matter or ozone, the precursors that cause ozone such as nitrogen oxides and hydrocarbons, or greenhouse gases like carbon monoxide. So there would certainly be a basis for using road fund reserves, but certainly county staff and you all are in a better position to determine that. So relatively small increase, but very important to us because of the leveraging that Janine mentioned. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak that did not sign up? Okay, then I will close the public comment session. And thank you to both of you. Next item is committee business. Anything?
Yes, just a little bit. You have some information out in the Dropbox for those of you looking at electronic, the answers to all of the questions that were posed by Budget Committee members, some other handouts, including the information that was requested on the health insurance data that I provided at the last meeting. I do need to point out to you that there's one correction to a number that will be different than what was stated at the meeting. So the document out there is the correct document. I also have another piece of information that we wanted to share with you, and that is that we asked our consultants if we were still fully insured with an insurance company for 17-18, what would you have told us our costs would be? So they've indicated we are still saving about $2.6 million annually in 17-18 by being self-funded, so showing that benefit there. Anything else? And the approving of the minutes would be the only other committee business we're aware of.
For me?
Approving of the minutes would be the only other committee business we're aware of.
Finding them. The minutes from the 23rd.
Correct.
07B.
Oh, 7, okay. I love techno. Okay, minutes of Tuesday, May 23rd, 2 to 4:30. Go ahead.
Chair, I'd like to propose a couple of corrections. On Roman numeral 2, I actually made a motion to approve the minutes as corrected. It says that they're as presented, so if that could be corrected. And then also, in regards to one of the sections regarding cybersecurity, Mr. Finch, in Mr. Finch's response, it says that they provide training for phishing, and phishing in the minutes is spelled with an F, and it actually should be a PH. Okay. So if that could be corrected, we're not teaching people with rod and reels to go out there. So those are the two corrections I have.
Okay. Any other corrections or comments for the 23rd minutes? Okay, is there a motion? And
I move approval of minutes as amended.
okay, second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as corrected. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, with corrections, minutes are approved. Okay, and there's a, I don't know who that voice was, but yes.
So maybe one additional comment would be that we have Commissioner Lycan via telephone. Yeah. Okay.
The voice from above. Right?
Yes.
Okay, other committee business. Okay, then we will move to number 4, committee discussion and deliberation. And I assume we did not get any additions other than those two that were presented earlier. Let's open those, item 1 up to discussion or out of Fund 124, Human Services Commission, Dusk to Dawn Shelter Program. Questions, comments? Go ahead.
Ready for a motion?
I believe so.
Okay, I move to reallocate $23,304 from reserve into the Human Services Commission's Dusk to Dawn Shelter Program.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to add the $23,304 from reserve to the Human Services Commission Dusk to Dawn Shelter Program. Any further discussion?
Just very briefly, I was pleased to see that the Eugene City Council made a motion that passed for $155,000 for the same program last night. That is an appropriate share for them to contribute to that to the program that for the first time last year we operated it throughout the winter, and it was a successful program run by St. Vincent de Paul. Also, it included camping sites at our MLK Behavioral Health facility. Once again, it worked very, very well. The only thing I would say is for the future is something that we would like to, I personally would like to clone and add a second unit. But this is it's a great program. Served over 100 people throughout the winter, throughout the very coldest, wettest part of the year. So thank you very much for the second, Commissioner Bozievich.
Okay, Commissioner Sorensen?
Pat. Thanks very much. I wanted to ask a question about the moving the money from the reserve, the 23,304, out of reserve. And in the past, we've talked about the reserve and what the appropriate level is, what the auditors expect. And could you tell us, Christine, what the effect of moving, and that seems like a small amount of money relative to what our general fund reserve is, but could you address that, what the percentage of our budget will be in reserve, and then with the slight change, how that will affect the reserve?
Thank you, Commissioner. So as you may remember, we've let the Budget Committee know that we're changing the reserve policy with this 17-18 budget. So our policy will be 20%. Our proposed budget is right about 17. So this amount, as you mentioned, is very small, so it'll be de minimis. It won't have a big impact on that.
It'll still be at 17%.
It'll be right about 17.
And the
yes.
goal will be 20%.
Correct, yeah. And we don't anticipate achieving that 20% for another year.
And are we
or two.
talking 3 or 4 decimal points difference between
At most. this
17
change.
point something percent? Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this this move, and I think that the issue of what's the appropriate level of reserve is going to come back to the Budget Committee. Like, are we going to stick with a higher number? Obviously, this year we're not going to a substantially higher number. We're around 17%, but that has been an issue in previous years of whether we go beyond a specific amount listed in our reserve policy. There's no current adopted reserve policy that this violates? I guess that gets to the heart of my concern. Are we violating the reserve policy by going above whatever it is now?
By
taking
taking this out?
$23,000 or $4,000 or what is in percentage terms less than 1% out of our reserve, are we violating our own policy about 17% or 20%?
We are not.
Yeah.
No, the current policy that's been adopted by the board is the 10% still.
Yeah.
The proposed budget, and the board will soon visit that policy and change it to the 20 or whatever.
higher number.
Right,
Yeah. But that's not in effect now.
correct.
And we've always had the 10%.
For about the last decade,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bozievich?
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say 10% was our previous, so 17 is actually a pretty substantial increase. It's almost doubling our reserve. My question, real quick, first I want to say I support the motion. The Dusk to Dawn program, the actual MASH tent system they had set up at the Lindholm Center actually had a waiting list the entire winter. And there were people turned away every night. So it's not that there, when you talk about 100 people served, it's 100 people on any given night. It's more than 100 actually for the program. And, ultimately, I'd like to not have to need a Dusk to Dawn program, that we have enough supported housing to get folks permanently off the streets, so that, the ultimate goal is to not have to need this. But with the grant program ending that funded it this last year, the City of Eugene has stepped up and provided a major portion of it. I think it's appropriate for Lane County to provide our small part to keep this program going. Very humane program that keeps people out of the cold. My question, though, for staff is, the motion did not say which fund the reserve was being drawn from. And I think that's going to be needed, because I think the next item is a different fund when we say reserves. So it just said from reserves. Do we need to have the motion altered to say from general fund reserves?
I'm sorry, general fund reserves. Yeah.
So I guess you might need to get. So I'm willing to
friendly amendment, general fund reserves.
And as the second, I'm good with that. I just want to make sure it's clear it was the general fund reserve, because the next item is actually road fund reserve. So I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay.
If everyone else is through speaking, I'd like to just take a second to say thank you to the City of Eugene Budget Committee, which includes the full City Council, for moving as quickly as they did to support the Dawn to Dusk for this upcoming year. In the past, we've kind of struggled, and sometimes it's been September, October before we started thinking about it, with the cold weather beginning in November. Getting this far ahead of the curve, Mr. Mokrajewski, is a good sign. It's a good way to give people a little bit of stability, but it also gives us a chance to stand back, and while we're not breathing heavy, so to speak, and really take a look at the services that we are providing. The City of Eugene also approved $1 million last night for discussion of emergency shelter. Now, that's going to be part of a larger discussion, I hope, that takes the support that the City of Eugene is pledging, and makes certain that we're coordinating our efforts and putting the money for emergency shelter into the right place. Because I agree with Commissioner Bozovich, getting people out of emergency shelter is really our goal. And if you look at the goal of the Poverty and Homelessness Board, adding 600 supporting housing units between now and 2021, that's a step toward that goal. Ideally, the people who want housing should be able to find housing. And if you look at the population who are homeless, the population who are in substandard housing, it's disproportionately, it is imbalanced towards certain segments of the population that we really need to pay attention to. Why is that particular segment of the population being living in substandard housing? But this is a great, thank you for the motion, and thank you for the second, and looking forward to a further discussion. Once the City of Eugene passed the money budgets, they also passed a motion to conduct a work session on the Human Services Commission and the work and the funding of the Human Services Commission. That's a great step in the right direction. In my 10 years on the Eugene City Council, we received an annual report on the Human Services Commission, and my experience, direct experience, was looking around that people were kind of just waiting for the next thing on the agenda so they could get on with the real business. Well, we're looking at it now. This is the real business. The Human Services Commission and the work of the Intergovernmental Committee is the real business, and we really are leveraging a great deal of outside attention and a great deal of outside resource to the issues that we're dealing with head on. So with the advent of the City of Eugene's work session on Human Services Commission, at some point I'm probably going to ask for a Board of County Commissioners work session, and ultimately potentially a joint work session on Human Services Commission, which would include the City of Springfield also. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging me in that little, it wasn't a tirade, was it?
No.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Those will come later. Okay. Any further discussion? I would just like to make a comment as kind of the second in seniority here on the Budget Committee in terms of Lane County, not government service by any means. Years past, if we identified an added expense, we also had to identify a cut. And while, thanks to Mr. Mokrajewski, we are in excellent shape this year financially, I don't want to lose track of that effort. If you want to add where we're going to cut, because as reserves get stronger and better, we need to protect those for the stability of our organization. And these numbers are small, but I just want to hold on to those concepts that served us very well when times were tough. Okay, so with that, any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the $23,304 for Human Services Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Carries. Thank you. Sid, carries unanimously. Next item, Public Works.
So I'd like to move approval of adding $4,393 in expenditures to the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency and have that funded by reducing the road fund reserve by an equal amount.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the El Rapa addition of $4,393. Any further discussion? Good.
So similar to the general fund, this is a de minimis amount of the total reserve and road fund. And we do know our road fund reserve has been dropping steadily over the years, but you know, the total reserves in the road fund are $23,044,923. So this actually, doesn't do much to that in the way of percentage, but it does a lot for El Rapa. Janine is our board chair. I am the board vice chair this year and have been sitting on El Rapa for several years now. And we actually went through an exercise a few years back where the agencies that support El Rapa and are part of the IGA were actually considering whether or not it was time to give our 12 months notice to end the agency and whether it was still useful to us. And folks that have been on the board long enough and maybe the budget committee might remember those discussions and the work session, the joint work session we have with all the elected officials and budget committees invited, where we kind of went through what would it really cost the participating agencies to take over what they would have to take over from El Rapa. It was actually more expense.
We're coming to the end of the motions, and so now
Sid.
We now have to adopt the budget as a whole. So we're about in. It's coming to a conclusion.
We can hear you, Sid.
Hey, Sid, you might want to mute your phone.
Oh, got it. Thank you. My apology.
I think Sid's the smartest budget committee member.
Yeah. He's in bed. So, but for El Rapa, this small amount of money, because it has that 3-to-1 possibility multiplier, if the other participating agencies and Cottage Grove and Oak Ridge never cut their contributions during the recession, they actually kept them the same. It's Springfield, Eugene, and Lane County that made massive reductions in their local dues, and this is a small piece back. But that small piece back, if it's matched by the state and the federal government, will allow El Rapa to add an FTE, which doesn't seem like much, but what do we have, 17 FTE at El Rapa? 15, sorry. So one FTE is a whole lot more manpower for them. And in particular, this FTE is going to help with nuisance complaints and also working on air toxics, which after the bullseye glass issues in Portland is quite a pretty hot issue. And I think will serve our community well. So I think the proposed use of the funds, once they're established, will do a lot of good for our community and help the responsiveness of the agency to everything from illegal burning complaints to people's concerns about what are all those industrial folks actually putting in our air. So I think it's a really great add and something that we can easily justify.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo Commissioner Bozovich's comments. Full disclosure, I have served in the past on several occasions on the Budget Committee of El Rapa, and being a person from South Lane County where we experience very, very high counts of ozone during the summer months, and then in the winter months we see the problems that occur in the community of Oak Ridge. So the service that you provide is very, very valuable, not only for quality of life, but actually for those people who might have respiratory challenges or other challenges, that you provide a good service. And my experience in the long term of serving on the budget committee for LRAPA is that they have done a good job of keeping expenses flat. That was one of the things that impressed me most several years ago, that the organization is very well run, and I appreciate Commissioner Bozovich's comments and considering Cottage Grove and Oak Ridge in this.
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
Just very briefly, I want to thank Commissioner Bozovich for your service on LRAPA. You asked me for a few weeks to replace you on LRAPA, and I realized at that point in time how much work is involved in working on that board. And your engineering background certainly serves you well as a member of LRAPA, so thank you for doing that. And thanks for the work you do. We are very fortunate to have a regional air pollution authority. It's kind of rare, pretty darn rare in Oregon, isn't it? Like one. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to add $4,309 to the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency, funded with reserves from the road fund. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
For the record, Mr. Chair, I was glad I didn't call anybody a horse's patoot while my phone was not on mute. So.
Sid, you did, actually.
Sid's still the smartest budget committee member.
Okay. If I am not mistaken,
Still smart.
I believe we can move into motions. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I have a little information for you on the levy that was requested at the last meeting,
Yes.
and then we'll bring up the motions for you. So this is also out on Dropbox for you, or those of you who request paper, it should be in front of you. But we did look back at the projections that we gave to the Budget Committee last year and then compared it to your 17-18 proposed budget. So we'll start just quickly here with youth services. So you can see tax revenue, other revenues still as projected. Expenses are about $100,000 higher. That is because of the Phoenix program move. And so that does change at least what the proposed budget says right now as far as their reserve percentage. However, in their case, I'll note that now that we're closer to the end of this fiscal year, they will carry forward more funds than they thought they would when they prepared this 17-18 proposed budget. So they do anticipate that they will hit the 150% of reserves once we finish this fiscal year and they have a final 17-18 number there. So they're right in line with that. And then if we scroll down, we have for the jail and the sheriff's office. Theirs is also showing that the projected revenue is the same. Actually, in the other revenue category, just a bit higher than we projected last year. Expenses are higher, and in the description there, we explain why. In the current fiscal year, they added 6 FTE, which was 5 deputy positions, a couple for transport, 3 for medical assistant, and a records specialist. And then that resulted in the higher expenses. So their anticipated reserves 17-18 at this point are about 141%. That also may adjust a little bit once we finish this fiscal year also.
Okay, thank you. I did ask for that to help justify where we're headed with that motion. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just for clarity's sakes, these projections are based on 38 cents per thousand for the reserve
They are. That
amount.
is what was put in the proposed budget, correct?
Great. Just want to make sure that's clear for everyone
Yes.
that might be looking on in the audience.
Yes.
Okay. So shall we proceed back to motion number 1?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the fiscal year 2017-2018 Lane County permanent tax rate of $1.2793 per 100,000. Per 1,000 assessed value.
Thank you. Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve motion number 1 as just read. Any further discussion?
Just say yes.
Any further discussion on motion number 1? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Okay. Motion number 1 carries unanimously. Motion number 2, move approval of the fiscal year 2017-18 local option tax for jail and critical use services in the amount of 38 cents per 1,000 of assessed value, with 30 cents for jail services and 8 cents for youth services. And I would like to dedicate this motion symbolically to those deputies that came here under the motion, under the local option levy that passed several years ago, dedicating it to those that came here, to those that will remain here, and to those that will be coming here because of hopefully the passage of this motion. This is for them. This is for the deputies and the families that are directly impacted by having those jobs.
Second.
Move approval.
Okay. Is there a second? I will second the motion. Any further discussion on motion number 2? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sid, are you in support?
I forgot to hit the mute. Aye.
Okay. Motion number 2 passes unanimously. Motion number 3. Move approval of the 2017-2018 local option tax to support 4-H and Oregon State University Go Beavers extension programs in Lane County.
I vote no.
In the amount of 15 cents per 1,000 of assessed value.
Actually, that's in the amount of 1.5 cents.
Yes.
Pardon me.
0.15.
Yes.
0.015.
1.5 cents, excuse me, per 1,000 of assessed value. Motion.
So I'll move approval of the motion as read, including the Go Beavers.
Second.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve motion number 3. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Motion number 4. Move approval to allow the use of transient room tax dollars for operational purposes consistent with Lane Code 4.175, subparens 5 and 6, and ORS 320.350 as follows. Lane Event Center, $841,469, and Lane County Parks Division, $711,337.
Chair, I move approval as read.
Okay. Second? Okay. Any further discussion on motion number 4? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Motion number 5. Move approval of the entire fiscal year 2017-2018 budget with all the adjustments approved by the Budget Committee.
Move approval.
Okay,
Second.
and we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay,
So I'd like to kind of take a moment and, we've had some discussions about some specific items tonight and all that, but I'd like to back up for a moment and look at the overall budget for a minute and think about the history of Lane County's budget, and then also think about the budgets of other public agencies around us, up and down the chain, whether it's up to the state level and federal level or down to some of the local levels. And think about what's happened over the last 5-6 years as we lost SRS funding and we had to make those massive reductions, and how we dealt with that. And Lane County has, taken our the bull by the horns and said, we're going to get control of our expenses. And we've done things like we just heard this year we're saving $2.6 million by being self-insured. We upped our bond rating so we could refinance bonds and save hundreds of thousands of dollars in this budget cycle and over $3 million over the life of that bonded debt. We've paid off debt early and saved debt payments. We've done all sorts of things to save expenses and work on that side of the ledger. And at the same time, we've been able to, and in this budget, approve a reduction in the tax rate. We have the authority to collect 55 cents per thousand of assessed value, yet we chose to collect 38 cents per thousand of assessed value. It's the work we've done as, citizen input from the Budget Committee, citizen input from all of our various advisory committees, our staff that has looked and all up and down the line on how we can save expenses. All that work has led us to balancing a budget that doesn't use reserves. $28,000 is not much of a use of reserves. It's not even within the rounding errors in those funds. So we've truly balanced a budget without reserves. We've balanced a budget without new revenues. In fact, we've chosen not to collect all the revenues we're actually legally authorized to collect. Now look at what's happening around us. As we're hearing discussions about trying to close a $1.4 billion budget gap in Salem and all the new revenue they're trying to look at to do that, yet you don't hear that they've worked for years with their bargaining units, with their employees, with the public on how they can control and inspect their costs and expenses. All we hear is they just don't have enough, even though they actually have record amount of revenue this year. And you look at other agencies around us that have had to draw massive reserves, Eugene 4J, in order to balance their budget, or other agencies that have had to make massive personnel cuts, Lane Community College. We are a rarity, an exception to all the other governments around us right now. And I have to say thank you to our administrator, our financial staff, the citizens that have given us input, all of our other elected department heads, our management staff. It's a lot of hard work we've done over the last 6 years as we lost SRS and timber funding from the federal government. But we're here this year with that 93% reduction in federal funding, not asking for more money, actually collecting less, not using reserves, and not cutting services. In fact, we've actually added some services back in over the last couple of years. The mental health professionals in our jail, the extra parole and probation officers, a little bit of extra help in the DA's office. We are an exception, and we should understand how exceptional that work has been, and we should applaud it. And I want to just say thank you to everyone that's been a little piece of that, because it's been a lot of hard work and is truly incredibly exceptional.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add that the county administration and board really focused on cutting internal expenses this year. For example, the motor pool expenses, the goal is to reduce them by 10% in 2 years. They've reduced them by 6% this year. And just a real look at all our internal expenses, and they've made some serious cuts, so I appreciate that.
Commissioner Sorensen?
Well, first of all, I think when we finish a budget like this, there's a lot of things to go around, and I hope I don't overlook the many people that have had a role in this. It isn't something that, one person proposes, the county administrator proposes, and then we just automatically see this conclusion at the budget committee, and then the board moves on to the adoption phase of the budget. But I do think a few groups should be noted. The first is that the volunteer citizen members, starting with Mr. Carrasco and down the line, all of the citizens that come to these budget briefings and learn about this budget and ask questions and participate and take tours and really learn as much as they can about this budget before they come up here and start asking questions and voting. It's just a pretty big undertaking to accept this assignment. And so, Dennis or Herb, everyone that's been involved here, I think you guys get a special round of thanks. Obviously, our budget staff, the folks at the kids' table at the Thanksgiving war room down there, and these guys up here, the budget staff, they work really hard. They're always available to us. And through us, as the commissioners, the public is really, they're available to the public as well. Most of the questions, I was visiting with Ms. Moody earlier this week, most of the questions that are asked, at least in my case, are questions that constituents ask. They ask me, and then we have this nice process of asking staff. So I think that that's really a positive thing. And then, just the hundreds of county employees that are involved in this. I mean, it's just a huge undertaking to get all these sheets into the budget staff, and of course the county administrator has to synthesize all this and make sure that there's, meeting the time schedule of proposing this budget. It's all really related. The fact that we haven't had very many people come the last few years to address the budget committee, we could look at this as a very positive thing, that people, pretty much approve of what we're doing around here, and therefore they're coming in. They're not coming in because they're pretty happy. We could also view it as, hey, in a democracy, hardly anybody's happy. Let's don't use happiness as our gauge of government activity. People just are not mad at us. And I think that's a fair way of looking at this. I don't think we should be under any illusion that at any moment on any particular issue, people could be upset, and we could see the kinds of budget meetings we've had in the past where people have come in. But I think it's better to have people not mad at you than the other way around, and I think that's a positive thing for us. The one final thing I'd like to say on the substance of this budget is, to me, there's a theme here of the innovation of the county employees. And by that, what I mean, the work at Public Works on the fleet management is a great example of that, but also the health insurance. That really was driven by the county administrator and the idea that, well, we could save, we thought, $2 million. Now we're getting an estimate of $2.6 million. That's something we're taking in. But another arena where we've seen substantial savings in our legal office. We used to have litigation consultants, outside consultants, workers' comp consultants. We used to have all kinds of other lawyers that were being paid commercial, and as a lawyer I would say reasonable attorney fees, but they were reasonable attorney fees, and that means a lot of money. And to me, again, bringing this in-house and doing this with the innovation and the energy of our employees, I think, is a great example of, it's not always cheaper to go outside to get things done. And I think that's a really great theme we've seen. And I hope we get more and more of these ideas brought to the Budget Committee by people that see that we might be able to save some money. And we might be able to save some money by doing it ourselves. And to me, that's been a really positive thing about the budget over the last few years. And finally, last but not least, I think Dennis does a great job as our budget committee chair. He's always polite to everybody. He always calls on everybody eventually. And he is a good leader. And I just want to say a shout out to Dennis. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I'd like to follow Commissioner Sorensen, and because of the lack of public comment, it kind of made me think this budget session a little more about the information that I was receiving from people out in the public that I was talking to about small and large county items. And what I would kind of frame it up and summarize it as is, you know, they're not happy with the roads. They're not happy with still releasing people out of jail. They're not happy with, you know, not going after property crimes. They're not happy with, you know, the services, human services things that the county does as well. But what they are is they are satisfied, and they have a higher level of trust of the county now than what I've seen in the past. That they actually believe that the county is doing what it can do, and that it's making good quality decisions along the way about balancing out with the resources that are available. And that's they feel good about that. They do actually feel good about that. They're not happy with a lot of things, but overall, I think that there is a lot more, I guess the counties and the employees of the county have earned a higher level of trust than they previously had. So they're happier from that perspective.
Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm not going to say a lot other than we have 3 elected officials among us in the audience who paid a great deal of attention to the budget this year and really helped us make it happen. So Sheriff Trapp and Assessor Coles and DA Perlow, thank you for your effort and your team's effort. And I'd like to point out that while we're all smiling about passing the budget without dipping into reserves and working on our structural imbalance that was there 4 years ago, which has been improved significantly, we still only have 1 deputy on the highways right now, you know, and we still need more people out doing more regular general assessment so we can make sure that people are paying their fair amount of taxes regarding the property that they own. And we're still district attorneys short in our offices. So we're not there in terms of having everything that we need. We certainly are miles, in fact, light years down the road from where we were 4 years ago. And everybody needs to be very satisfied with that. The other thing I'd like to point out is that we wouldn't be here today, Mr. Mokrahysky, if not for some of the people that you brought along to join us, people who are excited to come and join Lane County, who may not have been quite so excited 4 years ago. And I'm looking around the room at Robert and Kathleen and Dr. Warren and Lisa, and as I go around the room, I mean, we're full. Tim's over there, Mary's right there, Marsha's right there. I mean, we've got a room full of people. Greg's right there. Room full of people who weren't here 4 years ago who are contributing to this, to the balancing of the budget and making certain that we are doing that. A term that I heard just recently: we're punching above our weight class as far as managing our budget. So congratulations on that. But don't forget that we're still not there in terms of making certain that we have a safe county, we have a fairly assessed county, and that people are being held accountable for the crimes that they commit. But thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and thank you, Mr. Hidgmans, once again for being chair. And look forward to more of it. Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, my turn. I'd like to read something from the minutes of the 23rd, section 5, and I think it was something that hit me hard as one of those aha moments when Mr. Mokrahysky said that it's essentially very easy to cut service when you're having to do the budget work that we've done in the past and other jurisdictions are facing now. It's very easy to cut services and balance your budget and call it a day. Quote from the minutes: the presentation brought together various divisions to overview the internal services in Lane County with focus on prioritizing and saving resources to support those internal services before any consideration of reductions to direct services. We might have, you know, it was kind of at the tail end of our meeting, it struck me very hard in terms of the brilliance of that statement and that philosophy, and I don't want to lose that. I'd like to have that memorialized somehow into our DNA at Lane County, that we don't go back to cutting services, simply balancing the budget, but do the hard work that Mr. Mokrzycki discussed and represents in that part of Lane County. So while this has been a great budget year, I agree with Commissioner Farr. We have learned to do a great deal with a little bit, and we need to kind of go back to looking at public safety. Another idea I had was we need to identify those Lane County employees that are in very hazardous positions, life-threatening jobs where training and reinforcement of that training needs to be a priority. We do not want to have a tragedy on our watch in terms of somebody being injured or killed. Training and reinforcement of that training is critical in my mind. So with that, I applaud everybody also here tonight, and look forward to next year if you'll have me. And we've hit bottom, not bottom, but we've hit the base of where we need to be. Now let's start, let's keep going and move up from here. So any further comments on motion number 5? Okay, I believe we do have a motion, or a motion and a second. Okay, all those in favor of motion 5, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sid, is your entire group in approval also?
They are cheering along with us.
I am here at the event, and we're getting ready to have dinner with the live band. So,
Okay, sounds like a lot of cheering back in the background. Okay, I lost my train of thought. All those in favor? We did just going blank here. We will, okay.
We voted.
Okay, so motion 5 is approved. Any further business for the committee?
I think the only thing we would remind you about is the survey that was handed out at the last meeting. We did receive a couple responses, so we would love to have your feedback by next Friday if that's possible.
Yeah, if it's positive by next Friday, if it's negative,
Possible,
next
I
year.
said.
All right, with that, I don't believe there's any more business before the committee. We are adjourned.